Hey, hey, Beep Baseball world. Welcome back to another edition of the Beep Ball Blue Show. Dog, I got a little different microphone, and I feel like it can handle a little bit better things like me saying the Beep Ball Blue Show without it cutting out. Did it sound all right? Did I cut out?
Nope.
Nope.
You
Yay!
got the bass in your voice. You sound almost grown up finally, man. Yeah, you sound like a man full grown. Man full grown.
Yeah,
Welcome to adulthood, Neil Duck.
then you get to know me and realize I'm still ways out.
you,
Still got some work to do.
you grew up, and now it's time to put in your AARP card, man. Come on.
I gotta say, you set a new record for the show today. I mean, you aren't the best at communicating whether or not you're gonna be on the show or not. Whatever, like how quick you get back to me. I reached out to you, I think Thursday, and we're starting the show at 3 o'clock Pacific. 2:53, I got a text message. Hey, I'm in if you want me to. 2:53. A lesser man would have said, sorry, Jake Spoon. Ride with outlaws, die with outlaws, but not me. I'll step
Cool microphone isn't quite that cool, man. See, you shouldn't be talking crap about me. You see? You should be
Why?
on
Did it
my
cut out?
ass, man.
You
Yeah.
froze. Yeah, you froze for about 3 seconds.
Oh, I don't think it's the mic. That's my
Uh,
bad connection. I
Yes,
got
well, your
cheap
bad
internet.
connection, your karma hit you, man. So yes, I was just expecting you to send me out the invite, and then I just put it gone. But I realize I have to respond to get an invite.
So
So
yes, exactly right. Remember that going
yeah,
forward. Just a
yes.
quick note before we get into our guest and into the show. We got some cool stuff coming. I guess just explaining to the audience because I've been going back and forth with different mics and whatever, trying to get a better sound. I think this mic gives me the best sound, but I have to hold this mic. So when I have to do anything on the computer, or whatever, I'm going to have to set the mic down at times. I'm going to try to avoid any kind of microphone noise, but for you audio experts, you might hear some of that. And just letting you know, if you're watching the video, two things. One, uh, you're going to see me putting the mic down, picking it up from time to time, which might look odd. But two, I apologize that nobody ever now before our guest, Rob Weissman, told me about this big dark spot up here on the door frame going into my kitchen that I knew nothing about and obviously need to do a better job cleaning. But it didn't just start. Somebody could have mentioned it before now.
It's been there since show number one.
It is what it is. But hey, Rob Weissman, for the first time ever of the Boston Renegades, head coach. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Beep
Where
Ball
you,
Blue Show.
uh, Rob, you have written an article that we're going to dive into a little bit later. Just going for fun because you're a numbers person, went back and collected all the data, which is a problem in the MBBA, how much data is available. But you went back and collected the data of all of the World Series tournaments since 2006, which is when the World Series switched to the format that we're playing with now. And you came up with, at least statistically, what says the best of the best is. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to share the article after the show's over. But before that, we always like to dig into a new guest and find out how they got into beep baseball.
Well, a lot of people that know me know this story, but I'll tell it again. So I went to school at Hofstra University on Long Island. Hofstra at the time was known as one of the most accessible schools in the country. I didn't know that going there, and I ended up living in a dorm with on a floor with a bunch of guys who with different physical disabilities, and became great friends with them. In fact, still talk to many of them today. And one of those guys was Steve Guerra. So Steve Guerra and I went to college together, and when I got out of school, I've always been a baseball player, always loved playing softball, any type of sports. That was my thing. And Steve called me one day in 2000 and said, hey, there's this team that's trying to get started. They could really use your help. He's like, you know how to deal with adaptive sports. You've worked in baseball. I used to work for Major League Baseball, and you've got the right background. I think you could really help them. And the timing was perfect. I was actually injured at the time. I was on crutches, bad ankle injury, and so I wasn't playing at the time. So I decided to go check it out. I ended up coaching this team in 2000 called the Lowell Lab Retrievers. One player for the history. There's a guy on the team by the name of Bob St. Germain. He was kind of the one guy who had some NBBA experience. I forget. He'd played with two teams at that time. I forget if I know it was Indy, but I don't remember if it was Cleveland or Long Island. It was two of those three teams. And, they were trying to get started. And I walked into practice and just wanted to observe. And then I just couldn't stop myself and asked to just, if I could give someone some advice. And I kind of fell in love with it. And I dragged two of my good friends, Ron Cochran and Brian Grillo, who are still with the Renegades today. The three of us kind of started coaching that team in 2000. And then that year, I met a guy by the name of John Oliveira. And John came to me. He's like, I got this vision for how we could grow beep baseball in the Boston area. And I was all on board with that. But there was some politics involved with the organization I was with. Long story short, I kind of walked away from the Lowell team after 2000. I kind of helped John a couple times in 2000 and 2001 to try to help him kind of learn the game a little bit, learn how to coach it, help some of their players get started. I walked away from it.
You guys lose me or we lose
And then he
Rob?
called me after that experience and said, would you be interested in coming back to coach this team? And I've been coaching it since.
It's kind of the way it seems to work with a lot of people as far as
And he froze again.
Yeah, there you go. You're unfrozen.
I'm just gonna say it seems to be kind of the way it works as far as our sport goes. Some people go out and they think it's cool, whatever, and enjoy the day and never come back again. And other people just like right from the first moment, it's like, I want to be part of this.
So yeah, it's a little bit of both for me, right? So I was all in 2000. We can get more into this later, but some of the political stuff, some of the negativity kind of drove me away in 2001. And then I came back in 03 and we tried to right the ship and get things going. So yeah, real big tribute to John Oliveira, really getting this thing started. Brian Grillo, Ron Cochran, and we kind of really got it going in Lowell. And then John took the baton and got this team into the NBBA.
I
If I could just jump in with some mindless nonsense for a minute, you're saying Lowell, and I'm like, God, what? Where do I know that name from? And I'm just sitting here rolling in my head, I'm a historian. I'm like, oh, the Lowell Milk Girls, man. So, nobody knows what I'm talking about, man.
No
But
idea.
Lowell, Massachusetts is
Yeah.
very famous. But I just could not put it together. But now I feel very accomplished. I finally figured it out in my head, so I can pay attention to exactly what you're
There you
saying.
go.
I
But
have
go ahead.
no
I'm sorry.
I have no idea what like you referenced, but I feel smart now because I knew there was a Lowell, Massachusetts, so I was
Yeah.
tracking with him there. I,
Lowell,
I I
Lowell.
find it hard to believe, Rob, that you're convincing me that even a team from Lowell, Massachusetts, that most of us have never heard of, somehow found a way to have beep ball drama involved.
Yeah, there was some drama. There was some drama. I mean, hey, I'm not going to get into it, but
Oh, I
it
don't
worked
want to.
out.
I'm being
Yeah, it
silly,
worked out.
tongue in cheek.
Everything worked out for the best for beat ball, and ultimately, where everyone was able to put their differences aside and help get the put the energy that went to Lowell in. He's got to
Oh
he's got
man.
to uh, he's got to pay to clean up that stain and get a little bit better internet.
A lot better internet. You guys feel
You-
free to jump in whenever I disappear. It's not usually this
I'll
unstable.
just say it's usually me who's glitching out,
Yeah.
out here in the boonies, man.
I have
It's surprising.
I have an Ethernet cable connected to my laptop so that this won't happen. It's not helping me the least little bit. So you guys go ahead whenever. I did want to say real quick, go back to the beginning though, because I don't remember. I know it was a March board meeting. I was you know on the board through the many of the early 2000s for many of those years, and I was at a March board meeting either '01, '02, or '03. I don't remember what year it was, but it was before you guys came to your first World Series, and a couple by the name of Bob and Brenda. I have no
That's
idea.
it. Bob St. Germain. That's the guy.
Oh, is
Yep.
that who? Okay, okay,
Yep.
yeah. After our board meeting that night, I spent a long time talking to the two of them, just about building a club. Steve Guerra was there. That was the first weekend I believe that I had ever met Steve Guerra. So it probably was like '01 or '02 maybe, but
Dan
I remember by the time you guys got to the World Series, though they were no longer with your team, right?
Yeah, so Bob and Brenda tried to get it going. No, they successfully got it going in Lowell, and that's when I came in to help them.
Okay.
And then they were not with the 2002 team, but they were with the 2003 team.
Okay.
Yeah, Brenda was the caller for us at the 2003 World Series.
Very cool. All right, so we're gonna close out the show and talk more about your Renegades team, get people up to date with what's going on with the Renegades. But before that, let's dive into this article that you wrote. Talk about it, share it however you want to. But I'm interested in what inspired you to start digging into all these numbers.
Well, I've been working for IBM for 24 years or so, and for the majority of my time at IBM, my role is a data analyst or a business analyst and a product manager tied to analytics. So I do a lot of work with analytics and data, and I play with data all the time. And I've always kind of wondered, um, is there a way to do this, right? I was one of the guys who really pushed for the seeding, to seed teams because I felt that there is enough data that we can help to make decisions to seed teams better. And I wanted to see us improve the way that we were seeding teams, so that more teams had an opportunity to to shoot for a seed and try to achieve that goal at a World Series and not get their World Series rooked by San Antonio Jets getting seeded 19th because it's their first year, even though Kevin Simpson's pitching for them, or a Taiwan home run missing it. So that was kind of where it started, was kind of with that. And, just kind of was sitting back and, every once in a while I look at some of the drama that's going on in the league around the trash talk that's going on around some of the teams. And I was just like, I wonder if there's a way to put some data around doing this. And then the thing that kind of broke me into it was I was just looking at the in the fall or after the World Series when Major League Baseball announced their MVPs, and I was just like, I just looked at how they give the points out for the MVPs, and I'm like, that's how I could do it. So I kind of adopted that process, and it was just kind of a love of data, love of beat ball, a little bit of free time that I had during the off season. And the wife going to bed early and me being up until 2 o'clock in the morning doing something. That's really what it came down to doing. That's how it all kind of came out. And I was curious. Honestly, I was really curious about where the Renegades would do it, right? I was just like, let me do this. And I'm curious how it all falls out. But I was really curious after coaching this team for so long, like, where would we rank? I was curious, well, how my team ranked after doing this. I mean, we've never won a championship. We've been to a title game. And I just wanted to see if I laid this out, where would the chips fall? That was pretty much how it all started. Just
So
maybe
hold on, rank. You're saying where? I guess I'm kind of confused. I didn't read the article. So you started off talking about MVP, so like the individual, and then you jumped into talking about like your team and how well you guys did. Is the data driven by, were you trying to get to an answer about individuals or about teams overall wins or teams
Yeah, so
overall
the way I did
statistics
it,
or
yeah, let
whatever?
me tell you how I did it. So the way I did it was I had to figure out how to do it, right? And I felt that the so my time, I was in the league right before we went to the format that we're in today for a few years. So I saw the barbecue bracket, and we can talk about that later about some of the mess that I saw my first year and how that barbecue bracket went. But I feel like we could draw
Perhaps
a line
we
in the
shouldn't
sand.
use such derogatory names for that.
Yeah, yeah,
One, two, barbecue.
there you go. Yeah. So yeah, so 2006 was the first year that the new format rolled out that JT brought to the league, and I have all the programs from that, and I have all the brackets from those years, or I had 98% of them. So I had a lot of the data. I just needed to find the time to take all that paper and put it to pen to get it onto a spreadsheet and just lay it all out. And it just took a little bit of time going through all my archives and bringing it all together. So yeah, initially I wanted to see where we would fall out, but I wasn't trying to like place me somewhere. I was just curious where we would be. I knew we wouldn't be at the top because we've never won a championship. And I just ended up taking, so all I did, Bam Bam, was I turned around and I said, all right, I kind of had to draw some lines in the sand. So the first line I drew was 2006. And I thought that was a decent line because the format's been pretty consistent since then. Secondly, the major rule changes have all been the same, right? It's been four strikes, it's been 100-foot bases. I know that the home run lines moved, but that hasn't been a huge impact. And I honestly didn't know like all the years things moved. And honestly, I didn't have the stats prior to me coming into the league, which was 2003. And I don't think they're easily available. So that's where I drew the line in
They
2006,
are
right?
not. You are correct.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I've got most of the data, so let me see what I can do with what I have. And then looking at the MVP rankings from MLB, I was like, 15 points for the person who gets ranked one, and then the second guy's 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. That's how they do it all the way down. So then I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna just do this for the top 10 teams. So I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna use this MVP ranking system, and I'm going to apply this to the NBBA, and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to do this for only the teams that finish top 10 every year. And that was what I'm going to do. So whoever wins a title each year gets 15 points. Whoever finishes 10th gets 1 point, and fill in the rest, from 9 all the way down. So the second place gets 9 points. Third place gets 8 points. So I just kind of applied that point system to every bracket that we've had since 2006, and everyone accumulates points. Now, couple challenges that I had. Teams change names. So I had to make some decisions on teams that I was going to combine. And I think it was pretty straightforward. A team like the Indy Edge, they were the RHI Extreme before, and then they became the Indy Edge. And initially, Jared was pitching for them as the Indy Edge initially. So I kind of just kept that, I kept them together, for example. Rocky Mountain in Colorado, I kept together. So I had to make some decisions. The Carolina Pride, the Carolina Warriors, I kept them together. And there were some teams that I decided, like, the Pennsylvania Wolfpack, the Philly Fire, I kept them together. New Jersey Lightning, New Jersey Titans, totally different organizations. They are separated. So I had to kind of go through that and use my history and knowledge of some of the teams because of the team name changes. Atlanta Chaos, Atlanta Eclipse, separate organizations. So I was really at this from, you know, building a franchise. That was really what I wanted to look at, not just a team that goes and is one and done. I'm looking for who's the best franchise, right? Who can keep their team alive and be competitive year after year after year, not just go after it one year and then fade into oblivion. That was really what I was looking for, was that longevity um, piece. And that was kind of what I was trying to accomplish. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And of course, I've probably go point out a few times since 2006.
Yeah.
Because
And now I see
certainly
Bam Bam.
my
Bam Bam's line finally froze. He's frozen, and his hand is around his neck in a weird sense. He's got his hand up by his neck. There you go. All right, now he's unfrozen. Yeah. Okay.
That's funny. Um, I was, I guess, wondering. I think so. People will go read the article. We shouldn't give all the results. What do you guys think? Of like, share like what the top 10 was, and get reactions, or how would you like to do? What would you like to hear, Seth, and how would you like to do it, Rob?
Well, I haven't read the article, so I want all the details. But I can understand that you want people to go read the article and see all that brilliant research.
I think
Um,
altogether is what, like 20 teams are right in that number. Rob, am I correct?
So yes, that's a great call out. So there was 27 teams since 2006 that have had a top 10 finish. So there's a bunch of teams that didn't have any finish that played obviously and did not make that finish.
Right, right.
But we focused in on just the teams that finished top 10.
So I
So
mean, dude,
no, I hear you. We don't obviously need to go through all of that. So just pick or I guess leave it up to you
what
guys where
do you have
you guys are
a?
both aware of the.
I'm thinking either top 10 or top 15. Where are you at, Rob?
let's do 10. Let's do
Okay,
10.
all right.
And what do you want to start at 10 and work your way
Yeah,
down?
I like to go.
All right, because I think number one's pretty obvious. So number 10's not so obvious. So we can
Hey,
go.
yeah, real quick though, before you start reading them.
Yeah.
Can we combine the Dogs and the Austin Blackhawks, since they only won those other two championships because so many Dogs went and played for them after the Dogs disbanded? That would
Yeah,
help the Dogs ranking.
it would help. I mean, look, the bottom line is I had to draw a line in the sand, and I know that both of
Uh,
you guys played before it, and it was no disrespect to any of the greats that were
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
actually, I even call out in the article, I make sure to mention all the teams that won titles and all the,
yeah, yeah.
different things that some of these teams did, because I wasn't trying to disrespect any team. And I also wasn't trying to trash talk. Like, this was not an intent to do trash talking. And, one of the things, that I think, and I think a lot of you guys know, is how hard it is to keep a beat ball team going.
Yeah.
It's not easy,
No,
right? It is a hard thing.
we
And
failed to keep ours together as long as you've been able to do it.
And
The
and
yeah,
and if Ellen, and if you're again, I don't have a dog in the fight because I was a Bayou City Heat by all this time, but you would have to also include the Kansas All Stars championships in the Dogs count.
oh.
yeah, you're talking about Danny Papiano and
Eric and stuff like
So
that.
that ties back
like,
to my comment where I wanted you to know I was being tongue in cheek. I don't have a problem with where you drew the line. I guess I'd like to point out to everybody that I've read the article, and it's not just about like the rankings are about since '06 on, and that eliminates the majority of my career. So that's why I'm going to run my mouth a little bit. But I enjoyed the article because it does also touch on the MBBA history, and not just current dynasties, but previous dynasties. You get a little bit of everything, and it's a real easy, fun reader. I definitely will be sharing the link. I'll be including it with the YouTube and the podcast. When we put those out, everything we'll be sharing the link. But I think it's a good read for everybody to check out. So go ahead, Rob. Let's hear.
yeah. So before I get into it, I want,
Sure.
again, the emphasis here is about longevity, right? So this is a point system. So, if you've been here for a long time and you've been doing well, you're going to get more points. If you've only been here a short period of time, you're not going to be able to get as more points. So this is really about longevity. And I'm going to throw a stat at you, before I get into this. So I went through, and, Neil, you mentioned about the Renegades history. So I'm going to give you a stat. The Renegades in its team history have played 44 different opponents in its history since 2002. 50% of those opponents are no longer here. They folded. And that's, really one of my big things is like, how can we do more so these teams stop folding, right? And give more opportunity for these teams. And like, what can we do differently there? And we'll get more into that and possibly later today. But 50% of the teams have folded since my team joined in 2002. That's a lot. That's 22 teams that we've played. And there's been other teams that we never had an opportunity to play that have been one and done and folded. So again, I was really not necessarily looking for like who's the best team for an individual year. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm saying like what's the best franchises that have been out there that have not only had championships and great finishes, but have lasted a long time since the 06. Okay. So if we're going to start at 10, um, so the 10th place team has 57 points. All right, I'm going to do it this way. In those 57 points, they have 7 top 10 finishes. All 7 times they've actually been top 5. And 5 of those times they've been top 3. And that's the San Antonio Jets. Okay, with 57 points. And they've only been to 7 World Series. So they've really done great. They've pretty much, been a top fives team every year that they've attended. That's a huge tribute to that franchise. So that's number 10. Number 9 has 66 points, and the number 9 team has not been to the World Series since 2018. So they're one of the teams that's gone now. Okay. And they finished top 10 in 13 of the seasons that they went to the World Series. They had 8 top 6 finishes. And let me just stop there and say, why am I saying top 6? The reason I kind of measure top 6 and top 5 is because for a few years, and I'm not saying this happens every year, but some years, the teams that get into the 5-6, depending on who those teams are, they'll tank. They don't give a crap about that game, and they'll play their bench and let them play. So it's hard to see who's really the better team when they're both doing that. That doesn't happen every year, but it's definitely happened. So that's why I measure top 5 and top 6. So this team finished, had 8 top 6 finishes. The team no longer exists, but many of their teammates are still there, and that's the Colorado Storm. And they also got a big boost in their points when they got some of those Kansas All-Stars that started coming over to play with them. And when those All-Stars started coming in, that's when they started to really bump up on those for their standings.
I real quick just want to jump in because I'm glad you're explaining these things, but also I like hearing somebody finish in the top 6 like multiple times like that kind of speaks for itself too, though. You know what I mean? Um yeah, like that shows a consistency that not a lot of teams could show. But like Colorado's one of the teams on this list that surprised me because we certainly don't sit back and think about great franchises and have these conversations and throw the Colorado Storm in the mix. But it reminds me of when I've talked, Demetrius Morrow and I are good friends. He's part of the show often when we could get him in here. He and I like to talk trash a little bit, probably back and forth, probably me to him more than me or whatever, just about who's got more experience or whatever. But he's pointed out, he's like, man, I got plenty of experience finishing in the top like 5 with the Storm, and it gets kind of overlooked because they haven't won a championship, but it does show a consistency and a longevity like you're looking for.
Yeah,
But it's also that's your impression though, Neil, is also a function of you stopping going to the World Series in 2009
Oh, that's fair.
because
Yeah.
they
I
I mean
wasn't
again
there for the Ethan Johnston era,
yeah,
but
right.
yeah,
I mean
dude,
again,
yeah,
it doesn't surprise me at
yeah,
all that
yeah.
they're
Okay.
in the top 10 or
Yeah, good
whatever.
point.
So,
Great point.
yeah, Johnny Walker, he pitched pretty much for them the majority of those innings all the way through. I know he tried to hand it off. Oh, I forget the guy. Didn't survive, right? So they had a really good run. Some of those guys moved over to Gateway. But it's a shame to see that team not be in Colorado anymore. And Colorado's had a long beep ball history. In fact, in doing this research, the very first Colorado team was the Denver Beepers, according to Janet Leonard. And then Denver Beepers became the Rocky Mountain Eagles, and then the Rocky Mountain Eagles became the Colorado Storm. That's kind of the lineage. So kind of sad not to see a team out in Denver. And I wish they were still there. We had some great battles against that team over the years. Just huge battles between Boston and Colorado, and over the years. Great respect for that organization. Number 8 with 68 points is a team that had 15 top 10 finishes has made 16 of the 17 World Series. The only World Series this team missed was 2021. This team has had 7 consecutive top 5 finishes with a second place and a third place. In 2019, this team finished in third, and in 2016 finished in second. Then that is, surprise, my Boston Renegades. Okay.
Well, that is certainly earned. Until really I got on the rankings committee, and I guess I've got to fall back on what Seth just pointed out with me about Colorado. Um, I was there more in the early harder years for Boston or whatever, and not being as involved. As your program grew, it was probably another one of the programs I could have overlooked just because I wasn't there when you're making these consistent finishes.
So, I'll throw this other stat out. Boston is, and this is kind of one of the running themes with some of the stuff. There have only been 11 teams in the history of this format that's finished top 3. It's not a lot of parity in this league. Only 11 teams have ever gotten to top 3 if you count up all the teams that have been here. I told you that since my time, which has pretty much been only three years outside of this format, we've played 44 teams and only 11 of them have been top 3. There's not a lot of parity when it gets to the top of this league. All right, let's get to number 7. Number 7 has 77 points. They have attended all 17 World Series since the format. They were a top team every season until this past year. They were in the top 10 every season until this top year. They've had 7 top 5s and 2 top 3s, and that is the Chicago Comets. So, I'd like to just call out, hey, one of the things that, JT Herzog was a big mentor of mine. And he helped me out a lot in our early years, and I really wanted to model our franchise after what he did. And, he's been in this game a little bit longer than me, had more success than me as well. But big shout out. And this doesn't even count their championship, because their championship was outside of this format.
Before that, right?
Yep. All right.
Right.
Number 6.
Just for the record, that one surprises me. But go ahead.
That surprises you, or doesn't surprise you?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Number 6 is with just 1 point ahead of the Comets, and I think the Comets will probably be passing this team next year because this team is no longer there. Okay, so this team has 78 points. They have ranked 5th out of the top team. I'm sorry, they are. They won the World Series 4 times, and in every season they attended, they finished 1st or 2nd in this format. They haven't played a World Series since 2011. I don't have all of their championships because they weren't all in this format, but that is your West Coast Dogs at 78 points. So even though you guys haven't been there since 2011, you're still ranked 6th.
I think Seth would say those are just my West Coast Dogs.
Yeah,
those aren't his.
Those
aren't his West Coast
mine. Those are mine. Though I was there for 2006 through 8, supposedly.
Okay.
Yeah, I went. Call those my West Coast Dog.
That's
the Empire stage of the West Coast Dog. I was part of the Republic stage of the West Coast Dogs.
The West Coast Dogs have some of the most titles of any team in NBBA history, right? I mean, Austin's number 1. I mean, you guys are up. You guys are among that conversation. I don't know exactly where you're
number
at.
3.
Number 3.
Austin, Albuquerque, then us.
Okay. All right, so I mean, it's just so the fact that you guys are here in the top 6 and that all your championships are outside, because every time you guys went in this format, you guys dominated. You guys were one of the top teams in the league.
No, I am. I certainly, when I think as highly of our history as I do. And the part I'm most proud of is
technically it's not your dogs either, man. We both left the dogs
Fair enough.
within a year
Like
of
Finn's
each other.
dogs.
Yeah, that's all right.
I even though like I don't like to see that I'm wearing my dog's jersey right now, even though I don't like to see that the team name outside the top five, considering that like we were only there for like a third of this format or maybe somewhere
Uh,
roughly around there. It's impressive that it's number 6, I think.
Yeah, you only
doesn't
had
surprise
6 appearances in this format. Like, so that's 6 appearances out of 17 seasons. So yeah, about a third.
doesn't surprise me at all. There you go.
All right. Number 5 has 90 points. Okay. This team hasn't been to the World Series since 2017. They've actually only made 42% of the bracket, so they haven't been there. They've made it only 8 times. They've won 3 titles, third most in this new format. And this team, pretty much in all 8 seasons, they finished top 3. And that is no surprise going to be the Taiwan home run. So hopefully we'll get to see them back. They were forced. Now, one of the things I don't know, I'm calling them a franchise because they come to the World Series, but I don't really know. Like, I know Taiwan's got their own league, and I know they do some things, and I don't know how they determine who comes onto the home run, if this is an individual team or if they're bringing an all-star team from Taiwan. I'm not sure, but I am calling the Taiwan home run. This did not count, this, what we had the Taiwan Lightning and we had the Taichung County team came in
Right.
into Texas one year. So this is really just the home run.
I I haven't had a direct connection on any level to anybody from the Taiwan program in a long time, but I have always stopped people when they talk about how Taiwan just brings like an all-star team. That's not the case. I'm not saying that none of the players from other teams ever get picked up, like, but they have a tournament over there, and the winner of that tournament, which keeps being the home run, comes over here. I believe like the Taiwan home run's the best financed over there. Not all the teams have the same like backing and support. Um, but I don't believe the Taiwan team has ever been an all-star team that comes over here.
And look, the amount of money that they got to spend to come here, they don't bring a big roster. And so, you see a lot of the same names, year after year on that. Vincent Chiu's one of the guys that, that's been on those rosters for a long time. So you see a lot of the same guys, and for them to be able to accomplish what they do, and oftentimes they come with like 8 guys, travel across the world to play. They're unbelievable when you get a chance to watch them play.
I do agree with you. I hope that they'll return, but it's not going to be this year. It's confirmed they're not coming this year.
Okay. All right. So now we get to top 4. Top 4, actually, they just moved into the, depending on how, this is work. I know this article is brand new, but they just made top 4 based on what they did this year. So they have 93 points. This team has 17 World Series. This team does not have 17 appearances. They only have 12 appearances in the World Series. They've been a top 6 team in 11 of those 12 seasons and a top 10 every single year. All right. They've won the title the past 2 seasons. That's the Indy Edge / RHI Extreme. And that's not to be confused with the RHI Extreme, who went to the World Series in
A couple years
2021.
ago.
Okay, so that didn't
Had an
count. That's a
average
different
age of
franchise.
had
Different
an average
franchise.
age of 69 on their
Yeah.
roster.
So,
Jerry's gonna whoop me for that one. Oh, that's impressive also though. I know that much of it probably has just been in the last couple seasons, but to be 12 of the 8 or 12 of the 17 years, I guess we're talking about.
yeah, 11 of those times top 10. So
yeah, no, that's impressive.
right. And one thing I didn't mention, and I struggled with this, and and I had to come up with tiebreakers, and none of the teams were getting in the top 10 or tiebreakers, but we don't always have the same amount of teams every year, right? I think the lowest we ever had in this format was 14. And the highest we ever had in this format was 2015. We had, I think, 24,
Yeah.
right? So, obviously it's going to be a lot harder to be a top 10 team in a bracket of 24 than it's going to be a top 10 team in a bracket of 14.
Yeah.
but I didn't want to go too crazy, and I just kind of said it top 10's top 10 because when I was looking at the franchises and if we only had 14 teams in the league that year, well, that's a problem with the league. That's not on the franchises that were there, and that was kind of where I landed out on that. You can debate anything you want. I was just having fun with data, not trying to talk trash. So that was kind of where that's at. So
All right.
kudos to the edge slash extreme. So number three has 109 points. So they have made all 17 of the World Series during this time period. This team has never won a title during this time period. They have the most top 10, top 5 finishes of any team in the history of this format. They finished top 5 13 times, which is 4 more than their next opponent. And that's Bam Bam, your Bayou City.
Bayou City.
Your
That's
Bayou City Heat.
That's my Bayou City Heat right there. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So hey, you guys again, you guys had a
was
title. You had what? You got one title outside of this format, or
and that
two?
was there Bayou City Heat.
Yeah, but again, like the Chicago comments, like their title is not included in this. That
Right.
that was one that, and I was glad that you ended up jumping in, Seth, because I knew you would be proud of that. That was one of the things that struck me the most after reading your article, Rob, was how high the Bayou City Heat finished, and it is because they have simply been a pillar of consistency through that whole time. Despite not winning the title, they're knocking at the door often.
Oh,
Yeah, and hats off to Fonzie. You want to talk about consistency? I mean, he's the name that's been
He
on
was
every
there the
roster,
whole
right?
time. The
And
whole time. Yeah.
he impacts that offense, and that's a big part of that's what the Heat are known for, offense.
He impacts that team. I mean, at this point in time, the Heat don't exist anymore without Fonzie, I believe. I could be wrong, but like I've like he's a huge impact on that whole franchise at this point, I
And
think.
again, that's what I was trying to do about being about the franchise, right? So you're looking at that franchise, and I think you look at all these teams, and there are you know groups of individuals on each of these teams that help keep that franchise alive, and
Yeah,
that's not
absolutely.
easy to do. I know every one of those people on every one of those teams would tell you how hard it is to keep that team moving forward. So number two on the list has 112 points. They've been there all 17 seasons since this format. They have 16 top tens. 2023 was the first time they finished outside of the top 10 in their history. They've had 6 top threes, which is the second most, and 12 top sixes, which is the second most. And that's the Austin Blackhawks. And
Boo! No, I'm kidding.
they've got a bunch of
I'm
titles.
kidding.
They've got a bunch of titles that were in the old format, but they're already second in this new format with all their, the majority of their titles being in the old format. So
Consistency again. They've I whatever some of the franchises we're talking about. Yours, Boston, Chicago, like some are more homegrown, and they used to be more homegrown, but homegrown or under whatever way they're pulling it together now, and they still have a lot of homegrown players. Just over this format, they've taken in a lot of players. Not as many currently.
I think it's really only I don't know, maybe like one player a year or something like that. I don't think it's well, there was a couple years ago where they brought in Danny and Eric. They played small
Danny,
roles
Eric,
years
Lupe,
ago. Yeah, Lupe. Yeah, but Lupe
and
started
Mike
out as an
Finn,
Austin
and Mike
Blackhawk,
Finn.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Lupe
yeah. But
started as a Blackhawk, right?
that's I guess really. So maybe I shouldn't have said anything because I'm more thinking like how much they took in at that point in time. Like literally half the Dogs roster ended up on the Blackhawks in 2012. So
Yeah,
that's where I'm coming from with that. Either way, though. I mean,
yeah.
they've been a consistent franchise, and not just since 2006, since 1987. It's been an impressive run that I've only seen from them overall. Like that kind of longevity is crazy.
Kevin once told me like they used to like to try to bring in one out of towner. They used to like to bring one out of towner on. And that was kind of a thing that Kevin and I would talk about. He's like, yeah, we only try to bring one guy in. And I didn't go back to look at all their rosters, but other than Finn, who was your teammate, on this year's roster, I think they're all
Yeah,
homegrown.
no, that's why I started humming and hawing because I was like, well, outside of Mike Finn, that's a pretty strong
Yeah.
Austin team, like
Well, and
local
Tim
team.
Hibner, I mean, Timmy came in
Yeah,
after
yeah,
Kevin.
yeah,
He
yeah,
was, he's
yeah,
pitched
yeah.
for many teams over the years. So, this year they had Molly. I mean, that's as homegrown as you get right now. So,
Right,
yeah.
right.
But hey, it takes a lot to run a franchise, and sometimes, what we can talk more about this, but getting new players is damn hard. It's hard to find stuff. So, I'm sure that they losing Kevin was a big blow, but picking up Tim helped them maintain that roster so people didn't start, going and want to go play elsewhere, right? So
True. Yeah.
I'm guessing that could have happened. I don't know if that happened, but they stuck together with Molly, and she did great this year. So, and that brings us to number one, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. They have 118 points. They've been to all 17 World Series. They've won 5 titles, which is the most of anybody since this new format. They've been top 10 in 16 of the 17 seasons, and that's no surprise to anybody. That's the Indy Thunder. So hats off
Roll
to Book.
Thunder, roll.
All right, so we talk
Yeah.
about franchises, downtown Ron Brown, and Book have been pretty much on that roster pretty much I think every year. Jared's come back and been, huge for them, and what they've accomplished is incredible.
No, Books kept that organization together for a really long time, and we've already talked about it that it's just not that easy to do. Not everybody is successful at it, but not just keeping the like the program going, but keeping that tournament going for so long. I mean that tournament that they run there, the Bonanza has been going for over 20 years now, and that says a lot about the effort that's being put in there.
Yeah. So, running a beat baseball team's hard. I mean, that's, it's a really hard thing to do. And it's hard to keep a franchise alive. Like I said, how many teams I've been around since it folded. And, one of the big challenges I think that some of these teams have is recruiting. And yeah, it's really easy to recruit your buddies to come play from another team. But you want this league to grow. It's about bringing in new talent. And some of these teams that are at the top, that's what they do. Some of these teams. I'm not saying all of them, but that you got to be able to bring in new talent year after year, in order to keep your team alive. Because father time gets us all at some point, right? So
Yes, I was gonna say we all age out eventually. Maybe in beat baseball we don't age out quite as quick, but we all age out eventually. I mean, I think I shared this with you on the phone, but I mean, Seth and I were talking back in the late 90s about how we wish we could be more like Doc Bradley and Michael Garrett from they were Houston at that time. It was before they changed to Bayou City Heat, but I mean, they were so good at keeping their team good, but also finding young kids to get interested in the game. And that was one area where we kind of failed, not just the Dogs, but kind of California beat baseball overall because I mean, we all did. Everybody out here in California. California was a humongous part of beat baseball in the 80s and early 90s. And there's very little going on in California now. Darren Keepers down in Southern California is trying to working his ass off trying to build something up down there. But it's nothing compared California wise compared to what it once was. And I feel like I'm part of the failure of that. It is hard, but man, I wish we would have found a way.
it's hard. It takes a lot of hard work, and it takes people pulling together, and you got to have a culture. You got to have a good culture, and you got to have a culture that people want to be a part of.
That's true.
And that's really where it starts. And if you can build a culture that people want to be a part of, then that's where it starts. And then people want to contribute. And I'm not talking just the players. I'm talking volunteers as well. I mean, you got to have that culture for both people, the players and the volunteers, to work together. And we've been fortunate in Boston to have some amazing coaches and amazing volunteers and amazing players that just really pull together and get pride out of not only their individual statistics but the statistics of their teammates, and helping them grow and do things as a team. So that was really what this was all about. I wanted to see franchise wise, where again, where did I start doing this? I wanted to see where we fell. in doing this. And I was, it was interesting to see how all this stuff, laid out. And there was definitely some surprises on this list. I'm not going to go through it, but I also did another bracket where we broke down the top 10, the top teams franchises since we started seeding. So that's also in the article. We won't talk about it, but we've been seeding the league since 2019. So since the format went to a seeding, using that same point system, what are the top teams? And you can go back and you check out that article and read that.
Since you started it on a personal interest with your own team, were you satisfied with your own team's finish in this data?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to turn around and, mention me in the same sentence as the Chicago Comets or the Colorado Storm, yeah, I mean, we were just above the Storm. We're just behind the Comets. Yeah, I'd be really happy with that, right? I mean, we don't have a title to our name. We've been consistently up there. Look, one of the things that my team's really proud of, and I believe, and again, we don't have the history, but I don't think any team has ever gone from being the doormat of the league like we were in 2002 to a title game. Now, I don't know we didn't win it, but I don't think there's any other team that's done that. And we're really proud of that. So for us to be top 10 like this, yeah, I knew we'd be, high up there because we've been to, we're there every year. We didn't
Longevity.
go in
Yeah.
2021 because of COVID. I'm immune compromised. We just didn't have enough people that would willing to go. We wouldn't have been able to field a competitive team with some of the guys that didn't want to go because of COVID. But it's not like we didn't exist as a team. We were here. We were
Yeah.
playing locally. We just didn't want to get on an airplane. So yeah, I was really happy with it, Neil. Yeah, for sure.
And just like a technical question, I'm trying to get straight in my head. So that point difference between the dogs and the comments,
Mhm.
the comments need to finish in the top 10 to pass the dogs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're
To
all
tie
right.
the dogs, a
We're
10th
all
place
right.
finish would tie them.
We're
They got
gonna
to
be
get ninth
okay.
place to go ahead of the dogs next year. Yeah.
We're gonna be all right. I'm just having fun with
Well, I'd say
my
you're gonna be
friend.
all right if you keep recruiting Comets to come play for the Sirens,
Yeah,
right?
well, I don't know they got anybody else we could bring over. Although Sammy Smoka was one we're working on too. So we're working on it. But I don't know that any of the other players would qualify for our particular roster. Oh, I thought I had another question about that, Seth. Do you have anything else, Seth, on the article or the numbers? Any of
No,
that?
that was interesting. That
I
was
agree.
that was enjoyable.
I agree. That's how I knew I liked it because like I mentioned, it cuts out the majority of the success that I enjoyed with the dogs. But I thought it was a good read. I understand like drawing the line where it is. It makes sense to me, and it's just a fun read to kind of look how things turned out over the last 18 years. Before I guess moving on to anything else, because I've mentioned how this kind of ties into our last episode where Seth and Demo and I talked about the just starting the conversation, not trying to convince anybody. I don't think it needs to be done, but uh, starting the conversation if whether or not it's a good time to go back to having a consolation bracket and a championship bracket. And I guess before I get your comments, Rob, I'll tell you, Seth, that I talked to President Jerry Wendell, and he said he made it through about 20 minutes of the show before he had to turn it off because he didn't like where we were going. he doesn't think that we should switch up. He thinks it's fine the way it is. But Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me start with a history lesson. Okay. So we go back to that old format, right? And this is documented in this article. My first year, they were in that format. And, I listened to what you guys were saying and, but purely the way it used to work. And you guys mentioned it. It was, I like to swear, I'm not going to swear on this, but it was a crap show. Okay. It was a crap show my first year. And I remember, so my first year was 2003, Seth. I don't know if you recall this, but in 2003, one bracket had Bayou City, Chicago, Cleveland, and Columbus in it. So right out of the gate, one of those teams was going to get screwed because they were only taking two of them. And meanwhile, and I mean no disrespect to some of these teams, because I was one of them. My team was in one of these brackets. It was clear the Boston Renegades weren't going there. It was clear, a team like the Chicago Bluff did not deserve it. But Chicago Bluff ended up in a three-team bracket, and they got to go to a championship game. Meanwhile, in this one bracket, there was a three-way tie, and a team gets knocked out on a tiebreaker. Meanwhile, a team like the Chicago Bluff and the Rocky Mountain Eagles, which were not really strong teams that year, they both got to the championship bracket, and they got destroyed in the championship bracket. And I've got the stats and the scores in that article. And Cleveland, got the shaft, and there was a lot of yelling and arguing. This is my first year at the World Series, and I'm like, holy crap, is there a lot of drama in this league? And I got right on my first World Series, the yelling and screaming about that tiebreaker. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the old system at all. I'm a fan of the current system. I really like the current system, and I get, where some of these teams are, but I think they're in the minority. And I also think, you know, I'm just gonna, play it from my perspective, from my team. Again, this whole article is about franchises and how do you build a franchise. This isn't about how do you build a team to go out to win a World Series, right? If you're well connected and you're a good guy and got a lot of friends in this league, and you know someone who can pitch, you can put a team that's going to compete for a championship together. But it is a lot harder to keep something sustained over the years. And I think that's where we need to be as a league. Look, we haven't grown that much as a league. There isn't a lot of new players coming in every year. And that's a big problem. And that's where I think the focus needs to be. You want to focus on going to win a ring, or you want to focus on sustained longevity? And I think the answer should be sustained longevity. And I think this format allows for sustained longevity, um, for a couple of reasons. And I think that I've sat in both seats. I've sat as a team that's gone to a championship game, that's been in a third place game. I don't know if people consider the Renegades a top team in the league, but we are. We're top five every year for a while. I mean, I don't think when people think of top teams, I don't think the Renegades ever come to anyone's mouths, but go look at the stats. We are. I've also been on the back end of this thing, starting a brand new team. And I've been in the middle. So we have slowly climbed the steps to where we are over the years. And I think being able to play great teams when you're not a good team, there is some benefits to it. You can learn. And you're only going to get better if you play better opponents. Period. But you have to get something from that. You have to learn. You have to improve. You have to grow. I'm not saying you go out there, get pounded, and learn nothing. You go there, you get pounded, and you learn. And that's how you get better. You're never going to get better if you don't play better opponents. Right? So I love that. And then, so you get a mix. And for my team, for the Renegades, the Renegades philosophy is that we don't have cuts. If you live in this area and you commit to our program, you're on the squad. As long as you abide by our code of conduct, you're on the squad. If you commit to us, you're on the squad. So I have a range of skill sets. We've had 3 MVPs. So we've had on our team over the years. So we've got guys at the upper, the top echelon of this league in skills. But I've got guys who, had a stroke and lost their sight, and they used to be an athlete, and they don't have the mobility that they used to have. And they're just excited to be part of a team again and getting so much out of that. I mean, I've got everything from that and in between. So being able to play different levels of competition allows me as a coach to go in and play people and sprinkle people in. And if you go look at the Renegades stats, you'll see that there's a lot of playing time going to a bunch of different people. I'm not just playing 7 people every game. We're sprinkling it out. And that's how we've grown our franchise. And that's why it's important to us. And I would think it would be important to a lot of other people if you want to have longevity in this league and you want to do more than win a ring. and you want to have something that's going to last you and be there and have friendships and be able to help your blind, your community to grow, is have that pipeline of people coming in to filter in with the guys who've been doing it for years, and that mix will give you the ability. And those new guys, they need an opportunity to play. Not every new player that comes in this league is Casey Krause, right?
Yeah.
Not every new player in this league that comes in this league is Christian Daxton. No, you've got a lot of Ivan Rodriguez's. You've got a lot of people. You look around on some of these stats and you go look. They've done a decent job the past few years in the World Series stats. They put an R next to rookies, and you look, and I got a stat for you. Only 7 teams last year, and I'm not including Oklahoma and the Sirens because they're new teams. 7 teams out of the 17 brought rookies. That's it. And there was only 10 rookies on those teams. That's a problem. You want longevity for the sport. You want longevity for a franchise. You need to be able to bring new people in. You need to be able to give them opportunities to play. And I can tell you, if this model that you guys were kicking around went to some sort of, I don't know, championship, non-championship, however you guys are thinking about it, if you went to that model and the Renegades go into that model, now I'm having a hard time finding playing times for a lot of my players. And that's unfair to those guys. It's unfair to what we're trying to do. So I'd have to make a decision. Do we just, we'd be forced to make a decision. It would be difficult at that time. So I'm a huge fan of this. And I think this model works really well for people who have this mindset that I have, right? Where you're trying to build something, you're trying to bring new people in. And that's why I think it's important. Now, I get how some of the guys at the upper edge, that they're complaining about it. But I'd turn around and argue, if you think that these games are easy and they're cupcake games in the early brackets, then why aren't you doing things to bring new players in and let them play in those games? Because then they'll be there when your guys get hurt, and they'll be there when you need depth, and they'll be there when your guys start to age out, and you'll be able to keep your team, as opposed to you now spending all your money traveling across the country to go play for some other team. That's kind of where I stand on it in a nutshell.
Nutshell. You make a good argument. Seth, I have some thoughts. Do you have a response to all that?
No, I mean, I think he makes good point. You make good
Yeah.
point. There's nobody
Yeah.
can
Can't argue with that, right?
no, I mean, there's no I mean, just in kind of parsing your argument though. Again, the part about how the brackets were determined is a different question of how the tournament is set up. Like I said, so like you pointed out about like the Bluff or the Rocky Mountain making it that one year. That is a different question though of should everybody go into the same bracket after, because I think there's different ways you could rank people. But I do think I think it's a balance. I do think it is hard for, again, who am I really to say? But I would imagine it might be hard for teams to go get 12 run and pounded all the time, right? And they might appreciate playing teams that are more around their level for that time and building up their ability to play and their skill over time, and then having that kind of goal in mind, like, hey, we've been in the consolation bracket for 2 seasons now. Let's make that jump. We've gotten our time. Let's make that jump to the championship bracket. So again, I can see both sides of the argument. Again, it's tough for me because I've never played in the consolation bracket, so I don't know what that does to a team psyche or anything like that.
Look, you beat the crap out of my team plenty of times, right? I mean, you are and were an extremely big hitter in your day. One of the biggest hitters, in that we played against. And yeah, we would take our lickings. But look, and I've said this on a podcast years ago with Richie. I mean, I think, if you're starting off and you're new and you're, the Panthers or, one of these newer franchises that's really trying to grow it at home, you got to start finding, small wins, right? Looking, find little wins to get as you start to build your program. And in 2006, for example, I don't think anyone thought the Renegades were that good in 2006. And, we weren't. I forget what we finished. I'd have to look. It's not top of mind. I think it was eighth or ninth. I think we were ninth. I think we lost to Austin. But that year, we put Bayou City in the we were a bracket game against Bayou City, and we had the lead. I think we had a 4-run lead going into the 6th inning of that game. Now, Bayou City did what they do, and they walked off on us. But like for us as a team that had never been there, to be able to take a team like Bayou City Heat and have a lead going into the 6th inning of that game, that was huge for us as a program. Like everyone was, yeah, we lost and everyone's disappointed, but it was like, guys, keep your heads up. That was the Bayou City Heat, right? We got some things to learn, but we're improving. And the other thing is, right, look at this year's bracket. Houston beat Bayou City. I don't know why Bayou City keeps coming in my conversation, but Houston beats Bayou City. And you break this out, that doesn't happen. That was the biggest upset in the tournament, right?
Yeah,
last year, and maybe this isn't the same level, but the previous year, Austin was hosed on the seeding process. I ain't gonna throw that out there. The seeding process got some problems. There's too much attention paid to game results. Get off that if you want to get that later. But Austin got the 10 seed and they knocked off San Antonio, right? So those are the two biggest upsets that have come in the past 2 years, and they might not have happened if you had made this type of change. And to go to your point again, Seth, about getting banged on, that's also the beauty of the 12-run rule. You can't abuse us that bad, right? And so we get a chance to get out there and see what it's like to play defense against a team that can hit like you. And then we can go back to the drawing board and learn from that later. We can say, look at the lessons that we learned from that. What can we do to make our team better? And so, yes, you got to take some licks, but hey, what team doesn't take licks that's going to get started from the beginning and need to grow? So I don't know. That's how I take it. So
can I just real quick jump in it again? I've never been to the consolation round, but I do think I'm the only person in beep ball history that's been on a team that's been 12 run twice, two
in
times.
The same game.
Yeah.
Not the only one. I was there with you.
No, I did it twice.
Okay.
It's happened to me twice in my career. So I don't find 12 run rules. And hell, we got 12 run that one time when we gave up 24 runs in the first inning. I find 12 run rules very difficult, very difficult. So I'll let you speak, Neil, but go ahead.
My Sacramento Thrasher team that I played for here locally, like in our state, our Northern California league, they didn't make it to the World Series until 1993, and that was their only appearance, and that was more than anything really the beginning of the Dogs, more than my old Thrashers team. Still, I'd been on the Thrasher since 1987, and our very first game here in our Northern California league was against the East Bay Blaze, who had finished second to Albuquerque in 1986, and it was 19-1 after one inning. 19-1 after one inning, and I don't know how much I learned from that, Rob, but I did know we had a long way to go, and it did. When you realize you have that far to go, it does. At least it did kind of motivate us to work. I would like to back off one thing I said in the last episode, because I did say that I thought the NBBA should consider that making that switch this year. But I guess I was kind of caught up in all the drama that was going on and worried about division, whatever. I don't think any kind of change that's this big should just be implemented and thrown in. I do feel like if there's enough conversation from both sides, that just like JT Herzog got to address the General Assembly back in 2005. I think it's worth being addressed at General Assembly if there's enough conversation to gauge what the membership wants, because I guess in the end, I feel like what's most important is what the majority wants, not what I want or anybody else, what the majority wants. But the other side of that, though, is not a single person has jumped in since we did that episode, said, "Hey, I think this is a good idea." So, like, I'm not going to push for it if nobody's showing interest. I'm reacting to players saying they're not happy with the format and they want to play more like top 10 teams wanting to play more top teams, which I can't, I guess, generalize because you're a top 10 team and you're not saying it. Um, I guess I just as somebody who I'm running for a board position, I care about the leadership of this league. If there's an answer to make everybody happy, I at least want to try to explore that. That's really the only place I was coming from.
Yeah, I would think Austin, they're, any of these homegrown teams, I think I can't say I speak for them, but, I see how they coach and how they manage their rosters and their games. And, we do things similar, whether it's Chicago or Austin, I'm using those as an example, or even Indy, the Indy Thunder. I mean, they have the largest roster of anybody. And they do, they also say this, one of the other things that I'd be afraid of if you split the league is I think, it's just going to be more people jumping. More people
Yeah,
jumping and leaving their
trying to get
team.
in that championship round.
Yeah,
That's
I think
yeah,
that, the
that's
more
good.
people
I
that
like
do
that, Vic.
that, is that going to diminish the amount of teams that we actually have? And that's why I think the answer has got to be we need to do something that helps teams bring in new players, does not stymie you going to get your new players in if they're not Christian Thaxton or Casey Krause, right? It's hard to do. And if you don't get them in, how are you going to keep them interested?
No, that's you make good points. You make good points. The combination of my internet connection warning me all the time, and I have a team meeting to get to. Let's turn the focus onto your Boston Renegade. I mean, each of you, if you have more to say on that, I'm not trying to cut anybody off, but felt like a good time to transition. Let's talk about the Boston Renegades and what people could look forward to in 2024. More top five finishing.
Uh, yeah, that's the goal. That's where we want to be. I mean, look, we're really excited about this season. We have all our players coming back. We have one of the most exciting rookies we've ever had that started playing last year. So he'll be with us this year as well. So we are really excited. We've been in the cage since December. And one of the things that I'm really proud of with this team is and I guess I'll announce it here. It's probably not public knowledge, but we went to the World Series last year, and um, our top three batting averages in team history are Christian Thaxton, Joe McCormick, and Rob Dias. Those are our three biggest batting averages in our team's history, and um, Rob Dias played the whole World Series, but we made a decision that he was pretty much going to primarily play defense because he went in, he tweaked something playing in the Beast of the East, and he was not held back defensively, but we didn't want to risk anything offensive. We didn't want to risk losing him,
I
so we
believe
went into that tournament knowing that,
he only had 8 at bats, I believe, right?
and I
Like
think he
six
scored
or
in
eight.
7 of them,
I thought he was
and they
six
were
and eight.
against Bayou City again. The Bayou City, yeah, he took his headset off. But yeah, so we held him off to the last game of the tournament because we wanted to make sure that we had his defense, and he played tremendous defense for us. But then Joe McCormick, which was the reigning co-MVP from the
Right,
2022 season,
right.
um, against the Sirens, he pulled a hamstring
Oh,
badly. And we tried to get him in, and he was in and out on defense for us, and we were hoping he'd get back, but he didn't. And what we were really proud of as a team was we had different people contribute every single game. We had people, different people would come up and have 3-4 run games that you wouldn't expect. We were getting contributions from people up and down the lineup. Elena Regan, one of our two female players, she scored 2 runs against the Bayou City Heat. and really just gave us a huge boost in that game. Just, shout out to Elena. But it was different people every game. Drew Crook, David Sanchez, Shane Canton, Luis Rodriguez, Chris Kimball. I could go on and on. Every Christian Thaxton, obviously, is like he's there every time. Guy Zuccarello. We had different people contribute every game in those World Series. And so to be able to see that depth and know that we finished fifth with our two of our best three hitters only getting like a combined total of 15 at-bats in that World Series, of which all of Joe McCormick's came in blowout games against the Houston Hurricanes and the Sirens. We keep those guys healthy and on the field, and we get fifth without those two guys pretty much, just playing a little bit of defense. We're really excited about what we might be able to accomplish this year. And we're working to get better. We're all working to get better, we're not holding our laurels as to where we're at, and everyone's coming back. And then we had three players that didn't make it to last year's World Series that are intending to be there this year. So we're really excited.
I've never, because the MBBA, without giving any explanation or reasoning why, while they've been giving out the rookies of the year for males and females, they've been giving out, at times they just give out one to each. Sometimes they make it a offensive and a defensive rookie of the year. 2 years ago, I feel like your player Reagan got screwed out of being named the offensive rookie of the year. I thought she should have been named that in 2022.
Well, thank you for saying that, Neil. We were pretty pissed off about that.
You should be.
I actually worked, if you go back on my website, like I was one of my articles actually years and years ago. I wrote like 3 or 4 articles in a row, year after year, where I was naming the top rookies of the year. I would name I would go through who the top rookies of the year. And then Richie Flores reached out to me, and I think that, then it finally got some clout, and the MBBA adopted it. But I didn't understand why in 2021 they gave a female rookie of the year, and I believe it was to Dakota Hogwood. I think that's who won it.
She was the offensive rookie of the year. I don't
But I don't
remember.
think, I think in 2021 they just had a female rookie of the year. I could be wrong.
I'm
But
pretty
anyway,
sure
there
there
was
were
no
two.
female award given at all in 2022. And Elena, we were like, why didn't she get it? Because why did you not give it to somebody? If you only had one female get it in the previous year, why didn't she get it? Like, there's just, I don't know, there was no explanation. We were disappointed.
Yeah, no, they've been very, got to call it what it is. The MBBA has been extremely inconsistent on how they were doing it, and they haven't explained a single part of it. There's no
We
reason.
didn't we didn't
Right.
make a stink out of it. We were disappointed internally. We all know, and we told her, we know where she stands. She knows where she stands. And, for us, look, and I want to call this out, right? You guys are talking about changing the format, and, or asking to change the format. For anyone, that's out there, we have to be more positive in this league, because the negativity and the drama drives the people away that you need to do the work. No one wants to volunteer to do work to get yelled at and screamed at all the time. You're just going to lose them. And,
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay.
I'm positive, because I've been asked to go on to many committees, and I'm like, hell to the no. Yeah. So, I would just like, shout out to what they do. What they do is hard. I'm not saying what they
Agreed.
do is right
Agreed.
all the time, because
Agreed.
I was effing pissed about those trees in 2022. And I was pissed that we walked out on the World Series this year. We have fences, because I was guaranteed we weren't going to have problems after one of my players ran into a tree, that we weren't going to have obstacles, and we did. We need to work to continuously improve, and I think that's a problem. We need to continuously improve what we have before we start changing things. And
That's
I think
fair.
that's a big struggle that we have as an organization. We're just not improving. So
That's
that's
fair.
my opinion.
That's
And I'm
fair.
pissed about those trees. That was a dangerous
That was Chris
situation.
Kimball, right?
Yeah, and it's like, hats off to him, but yeah, I was really afraid that he would never want to play again. And quite honestly, his brother was thinking about playing for us, and his brother said no after watching that.
Yeah.
It's not right that type of stupidity, I'm calling it stupidity, happens. And then we run in with fences this year. It's like, come on, guys. Now I heard why the fences happened, and there was a reason, but my team had that issue. You could have put my team on the fields that didn't have fences after I bitched and moaned, because there could have been lawsuits after that. So,
No,
but I
we have
digress.
a player that got injured badly in a similar way out of practice, and it affects her in games. You know, she's new or whatever, and we'll, you know, I trust that she's going to work through it. But just like your player, it once it happens, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You know,
Yeah.
your mind knows the possibilities, and we need to do. I agree with the fact that we need to do anything we can more with I think like with the outfielders because that's I think the where the areas that usually get most crowded in if they do. But either way around, if there's any part of the field that's going to put a player in jeopardy, you got to be concerned about that.
Their safety is the most important thing, and as a coach's standpoint, it needs to be. And I can't believe that we've had 2 World Series with obstacles in the outfields over the past 2 years. So I'm looking forward to not having them in St. Louis. So yeah.
All right. Well, I have nothing else. Rob, do you have anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap things up? Anything you'd like to touch on that we didn't get to?
No, I just want everyone to get along, and hopefully that this was just a fun project. I hope no one takes this personally. That was not the intent. I just wanted to do something data driven, have some fun with it. Maybe someone can think of a way to do this better or to use it for something else. But I really want to encourage teams to stay together and work out problems and build your franchise. And I really want to see us get back over 24 teams, right? There's no reason we can't, but it gets hard when people keep jumping ship to go play somewhere else. And, I really want to encourage teams to work together, to recruit new people, to find those people that never knew the sport existed and get them out there because it's life changing. And, part of what makes this sport so great is making an impact on someone's life, whether they're an elite athlete or that may have lost their sight and knows they can still play ball, or they're someone that never knew about the sport, never played a sport before, and now has the opportunity to play a team sport and be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the NBBA, and I just wish we would promote that more and keep that in mind as these teams are building themselves out.
Oh, that's well said. I don't think anybody should have. I see no reason why anybody should react harsh to the article because it's just something you compiled, put together, and shared. I found I don't even really like reading through numbers and stuff too much, but I enjoyed it. Found it an easy read. And I enjoyed our conversation, man. This has been fun. It's ironic. We've been around each other since 2003, and we've never talked more than we have this week. I don't think.
That's true. True that.
But I enjoyed having you on here. That was a fun conversation. I appreciate you taking the time.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
You
See
bet.
you later.
Everybody else, that's it. I plan to put together some kind of a preview of the Las Vegas tournament that's coming up in just like 10 days or less. So we will have something along those lines next week. Everybody be well until then. Close up shop here. Into the live stream. Everybody be well.